Okay, so I think we can go ahead. Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion on the topic of a new generation of Hausa Diaspora as part of the Hausa Book and Arts Festival 2024, holding online and in person in Abuja, Nigeria. I am Mazhun Idris. I am based in Istanbul. I am a journalist and a Hausa and English writer. A brief about my background is I have been writing and being a freelance journalist for some time, and then a localization specialist, having worked with some international companies, localizing mostly into Hausa language and Nigerian pidgin, and then helping with localization of some African languages. Uh, I am also a literary writer. Also, in Kano, I was once the secretary of the Literary Association. So that's brief about me. Because the chat is about Hausas in the diaspora, I have been a diaspora Hausa person in the United States, and then now in the Turkey, the way it is pronounced now. So, briefly, before we go to the conversation, I would like to introduce our panelists. Let me begin with Aisha Rimi. Aisha Rimi is a Nigerian British journalist. She's a reporter for Haiku, where she covers stories relevant to Muslim communities across the United Kingdom. And as a journalist, she has written for the British newspapers like The Telegraph and other magazines. She has been featured also in The Same Cloth, an anthology of essays written by British Muslims, Muslim women in the UK. She is also the founder of Black Girls Right Too. I like this this organization's name. So it's a supportive community for Black women writers. Thank you so much, Aisha Rimi, for being a panelist. Before I give the mic to you, I will also introduce Dr. Marzooq Ungogo. Is a veterinarian and a bioscience researcher. And his research focuses on drug resistance in parasitic diseases and the biology of post-parasitic interaction. He holds the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from ABU Zaria, Ahmad Bello University Zaria, and MSc and PhD from University of Glasgow. He's also currently a postdoctoral research fellow at the Roslin Institute, University of Edinburgh, UK. Marzooq, as many people know him, is passionate about mentorship and committed to developing Africa's capacity for molecular biology, and also he has about 20 papers peer-reviewed in journals. So that's briefly. I think we are going to hear more from the panelists themselves. So the topic of discussion is a new generation of Hausa diaspora, where our panelists, all of us here, are actively engaged in our different countries outside of our native lands. And then the main topic is we want to uncover the stories about being a Hausa and being a diaspora, and the myth around it, and stuffs like that. So let me begin with Dr. Marzooq. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Mazhun. Thanks for having me here. It is an honor,
Okay.
and it is my pleasure being here.
Okay. Also, Aisha.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Okay. So let me repeat myself. Why do you think this topic of our panel discussion is called a new generation of Hausa diaspora? What is new about us? What is diaspora about us? And what is Hausa about us? Let me begin with Marzooq.
I think there has been, has always been migration and transportation from northern Nigeria to the world, but it historically has been focused on the trans-Saharan trade and the trans-Saharan route for religious and other geographical purposes. And it has always been either trade in most cases or travel to the Holy Land for the pilgrimage. So I think what is new about the Hausa people going outside the world or outside the Hausa land in Nigeria and Niger in the past few decades is people going for education, especially modern education or Western education. Of course, I made a mistake earlier. Definitely, there were travels around the Saharan route as well for Islamic scholarship. So, but then I think it is all religion. So, but this new generation are also traveling. In addition to those who are traveling for religious education, there is this a new generation that is predominantly traveling for white collar job and Western education and other modern businesses as well. So I think that's something different and that is something new. And then we are also young. Maybe because settlement has been looked with a little bit of restraint, I would say. Hausa people, they travel, but they don't usually settle as much as other people do. We love to connect, to continue connecting to the roots, and then we would rather do what traditionally is called Shirani. You go get what you need to get, and then you return home. Yeah, and so we are seeing a generation that is staying, giving birth to another generation that is identifying itself as British Nigerian, American Nigerian American Hausa, and stuff like that. So what is diasporan about us? Once you go, you can't come back. In whole, you are now some form of hybrid that is probably living in the United Kingdom, but half of your mind is living in Nigeria. Half of the news you watch or you follow is about Nigeria. And then to some extent, if you live in the UK, you are also following the UK politics. But there isn't, you can't say you are predominantly focusing all your life on where you live. So another thing is, even when you return, you have come back with, probably when you return back home, you have come with a baggage of maybe enlightenment or an improvement, or more or less just an awareness of who you are and where you come from, where you have been, and where you are now. So I think this is, and then there is also the issue of identity, because for someone like me who is from Kano, which is predominantly Hausa Muslim, traveling out would probably you start to feel that, come to the realization that you are a black person, you are a Nigerian, and then you are a Nigerian people haven't seen or haven't seen frequently. You look entirely like a different Nigerian. You have questions like, you don't look like a Nigerian, you don't speak like a Nigerian, and you probably don't act like a Nigerian. So you are not the Nigerian you are used to. So all of a sudden you have uh, this lots of education to give out and to explain who you are, why you do what you do, and what shapes you, and so on. And then there is also maybe the last thing I will say that makes us very unique, especially in diaspora setting, is Islam. Uh, most Hausa people I have met whenever I travel out, it's usually in the mosque. Just go to the central mosque. You end up seeing a Hausa man. Recently, I was in London with my mom, and then she was in the female section, and she ended up meeting a Hausa woman from Ghana. I just didn't know, but I could overhear them speaking Hausa. I was like, what are the odds? And it was a very local mosque, not London Central Mosque and stuff like
Or
that.
in
So
malls.
there's also that. Yeah.
I say sometimes
So
in
that is
malls or stations.
exactly. I think that is what makes us a new generation of Hausa people in diaspora, and these are the common things we always identify with or that make us peculiar. Thank you.
Okay, I will come back to you because I notice you somehow veered from calling yourself Hausa, British Hausa, into Nigeria, British Nigerian, because this is important because of the current debate about a British politician preferring to call herself with, uh, with a hyphenation of British and her ethnic group instead of Nigeria. So I'll come back to you on why you are calling yourself a Nigerian more than a Hausa. Maybe I'm accusing you, but
Okay.
you defend yourself later. So, Aisha, coming to you, if you notice something, I think you can hear me well, right? Okay. You notice the definitions given by Dr. Marzooq about a diaspora. He covers people that have traveled during the trans-Saharan trade for trade and for knowledge seeking, and he briefly mentioned the Chirani people that go to seek for greener pastures outside the Hausa lands. Did you notice that he missed the slavery period? I mean, the slaves that were taken out of Hausa land to other countries. Uh, does that mean, I know as a social scientist and maybe a journalistic researcher, do you think the definition of diaspora doesn't cover people outside the so-called expatriate kind of definition?
No,
I hope you get
that's
me.
yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I think yeah, if I'm honest, when I hear diaspora, I do think, people like myself, like Marzooq, that are kind of either, born and raised in the country that isn't their country of origin, or, have decided to move there for educational, financial, economical, whatever, purpose they've decided to move for. But yeah, I think that's a very important aspect that we don't necessarily always include. I mean, for example, we do have, I don't know exactly if this group of Hausa diasporans are from uh, is from slavery, but you have a large community of um, Hausa people in Saudi Arabia. There's this, I think it's called the House of Hassawi. And, there's this whole group of Saudi Arabians, Black Saudi Arabians that descend from Hausa people in northern Nigeria. But I don't think, like you said, we would necessarily think to include them as part of the Hausa diaspora, but perhaps also it depends on how the people within the diaspora identify themselves, because I think for that group of people, for example, they very much identify as Saudi Arabian and Arab, and don't have as close a link to their Hausa ancestry like we do, because we're only 1-2 generations away from it, or first generation. So yeah, I think there's when you really dig deep, there is a very large Hausa diaspora that we're probably not including everybody that should be included in the umbrella term.
So you are somehow seeing like the houses that traveled to Middle East or some North African countries, it's easy for them to adapt and mingle and become part of the community and somehow obscure their Hausaness. Maybe they eventually become the Arabs or the local population with a think of some historic affiliation to Hausa. So you are saying that unlike modern diaspora who travel to white, predominantly white skin population and an entirely different climate, so they will never kind of adapt or become part of the new lands. Is that what you are saying?
Um, yes, perhaps to an extent. I think because these this part of the diaspora, they've moved to countries that are Islamic, so they don't have kind of, I guess, their culture, their identity isn't stripped away so much as, for example, like me living in being born and raised in the UK. The Western culture, the UK culture is very, very different to that of which, my parents grew up in, of which they've
Right.
raised me in. So I think because they're in a place that lends itself very well to their existing culture, that's why, perhaps there isn't that kind of battle of identity that myself and other people like me might experience.
Okay, I will come back to you. The issue of migrant versus expatriate, especially the hyphenated identity, I think migrants in Saudi Arabia tend to prefer to become Saudis so that they get some citizenship and all the associated benefits of citizenship, unlike some diaspora Nigerians in places like the United States who may prefer to be called Nigerian American for some reason. So, Marzooq, back to you. You remember what I said about a particular British politician calling herself affiliated to her ethnic group rather than Nigeria. Are you somebody like that? Do you identify as a Hausa British or Nigerian British or any other hyphenated identity?
I think the journey for everyone is different. Aisha was
Yes.
born in the UK and was raised in the UK, so that means she holds a British passport. I don't. I have lived in the UK for the past 9 years, mostly as a student, and in the past 2 years I transitioned uh, to a research worker, and it is a journey. After a few years, a year or two, I would probably be entitled to become a permanent resident, and then
Right.
after a while, I can become a British citizen, for
Right.
example. So, why did I say it is a journey? I am not entitled to call myself British because I am not.
Mhm.
Within the British environment, I am not British because I am on a visa. I
Nice.
don't really know. That's why it would have been interesting when we have someone who has transitioned, maybe has been there for 15 years, and then we can watch at what point does that person start to identify more with the British identity than with the Nigerian identity. And I think
Yeah, yeah, but
probably
practically, I
this
think
is
you are
someone
talking. Sorry, you are talking like officially, like we cannot see your
officially.
passport, but
Mhm.
practically, do you live your life after 9 years in Britain? Do you live your life as a Hausa person? Like there is this myth of like do Hausa people dress like Hausas in Europe, for example, or do they really eat tuwo and mia stuffs like that? And do they do speak Hausa to their kids and stuffs like that? I think these are the interesting aspect of the
So I
diaspora
do
life
as
that you
much as
share.
possible. I try as much as possible. It is not even trying. I'm not trying. I subconsciously live as a Hausa man to the
Right,
best of my ability. to the best of my ability, because you can't dress like this. I'm on holiday in Nigeria. That's why I'm dressed like this. Now, you can't dress like this all year round in Edinburgh, for example, or even in London,
if you
which
like
has even if you like to. Right. So there are also other hindrances to, as I have said, Bahaushe ce ba a bari a kwashe daidai.
Duka, a kwashe duka.
Baya yiwuwa, it is practically impossible. Right. So I think I have a feeling that your identity is gradually taken away bit by bit, or you shed it out bit by bit until you completely embrace a new identity if you want to. One. Right. Number two, many people have their objectives when they travel out. If you travel out with the Chirani mentality, chances are there you will maintain as much of your indigenous culture as possible. But if you want to settle in the first place, or if you accidentally ended up settling, even if it is against your wish, you will end up having children. People like Aisha, who are already a second generation, is completely different from me, who wasn't born there, and so on. And with Kemi, I think half of it is probably true, or what she actually feels, and half of it may just be politics, because she is trying to garner as much sympathy, as much pity. She probably been a Nigerian opposition leader in the UK, may probably come with a lot of baggage that the area or burden of what Nigeria is, or what Nigerians do outside Nigeria currently, that she probably wants to shed as much as possible for political advantages. But it is also possible that after 20 years, she's been there for 20 years or so, and she's been a politician for more than 10 years or so, she probably has resolved her identity and doesn't want to ever go back to Nigeria, and doesn't see Nigeria benefiting her in any way possible. So do away with the unnecessary burden the Nigerian identity will probably give her, and then live her life as a successful British politician.
So you see it as a social transformation and simple?
I think so. There is social transformation, and then there is also the politics about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But then what I see at the end, as I have written earlier, I just see a Nigerian politician. As much as she tries, there are traits that are very particular about Nigerian politicians that she has just exhibited. Use use the entity called Nigeria when it benefits you, as she has done around 10 years ago when she first contested. There was a letter circulating where she appealed to the Nigerians living in the UK for support. And at that point, she needed all Nigerians. But now, in the grand scheme of things, what is the population of Nigerians in the UK, or people who identify as Nigerians in the UK? So if it comes to what counts, which votes are Nigerians going to the Nigerian votes help her more, or more than the Nigerian identity will underweigh her, for example? So it is more like a trade-off, I would say.
So I think to come to kind of play her advocate, talking about Banedot, is it, you pronounce her name Badenoch, right? Badenoch.
Banedot, something like that. I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah. So to come to her defense,
I spell it better than I can pronounce it.
Yeah, I think it's common. So to come to her aid in her absence, we are not talking about her, but we are making a case of her. I think it's common with politicians. We have seen it with Kamala Harris in the recent elections in the United States, where she decides now to associate herself with Black Americans when she had been reportedly as associated to being Asian American or something. So I think it's common with politicians. So let me go back to Aisha. I think the three of us have a very unique difference in the fact that while Aisha has been a second generation Hausa Nigerian in the United Kingdom, Marzooq has spent almost a decade in United Kingdom. Maybe he will be a first generation British Nigerian. And myself, I kind of have a mixed experience, having lived in the United States and now living in Turkey. And I don't know, maybe in the future I will live somewhere outside of these two places. So the transition from the difference between a diaspora who is a student and a diaspora who is an expatriate and a diaspora who is a migrant. What do you make of these differences, Aisha?
Well, yeah, like you said, they're all three very unique experiences. I think it's interesting you said migrant, because I would say that I don't know, is it I don't want to say like I consider going sort of going back to what you were saying about Kemi and the whole identity thing. Like, yes, I'm British because I was, like born and raised here. I have the passport, whatever. But I think deep down, it's always going to be that Hausa identity for me that really comes through more so than anything. Yeah, so sorry, what was your question again? I forgot. Sorry.
So now that you have brought us back to question of Kemi, like you are not a politician like her.
Yeah.
So are you happy to identify as a Hausa, British Hausa, or Nigerian Hausa, or any one that comes to be relevant? Are you okay
Mm.
with any of them?
I think growing up, I was always very, I'm Nigerian. And I still am very, I identify as Nigerian, proud to be Nigerian. But I do think as I got older and I started interacting more with the Hausa community here in the UK, and
Oh, right.
I became friends with most of my friends now are, other Hausa girls like myself, raised in the UK. I got married to a Hausa man that was born and raised here just like myself. So I think as I've kind of become more involved in the community, and I've realized actually, no, there are differences between being Hausa there and Yoruba and, all the other many amazing tribes that make us Nigeria. So I do think how I identify, I think I definitely kind of extract that Hausa identity more so than
Right.
the one whole Nigerian identity, because I didn't really start interacting with other, Nigerians like myself till I got to university. But the majority of them are, Yoruba, Igbo, and I, although we were all Nigerian, I could see that there were just clear differences between our cultures, which is, great. They're all beautiful cultures, but the more people kept saying, Nigerian this, Nigerian that, Nigerian culture, it made me realize I don't think you can say there's one Nigerian culture because we're so
Right.
different. And so, yeah, as
Exactly.
time has gone on, I think I've just kind of I've been drawn more to my Hausa identity because it is just so different and unique. But I will always say I'm Nigerian too. I will never. I'm not Kemi. I'm not going to denounce being Nigerian or anything like that. But I can, if she wasn't a politician, I could understand why one would say, "Oh, I identify more with being Yoruba than Nigeria." But I don't believe that. what she's saying is like from a genuine place. So yeah.
Okay, let me go back to Dr. Marzooq. I think we have talked about a lot about Kemi. Personally, like, was there a point in time that you had a breaking point, or rather a turning point, that you decided to get associated, to associate more with people from the House of people, like attending events or things like that? I know you went to the UK as an adult, and later on a family man. So what was the story behind all this transition and evolving from being Hausa, calling yourself more of a Hausa or of a Nigerian? I think it might be fluid, but then tell me something about your past.
I think it probably boils down to if the push comes to the wall. I have a house in
Right.
Nigeria, and I'm Nigerian citizen and not a citizen of any other country. So I have a peculiar situation. So for now, I will definitely call myself Nigerian, and I don't know. Maybe it is subconscious at the point you have another passport. If you want to, uh, you probably gradually start to adapt to a new identity as a Nigerian British if you want to, until probably a point when all your children are there in the UK, for example, have grown up, and you've seen a future where you are unlikely going to go back to Nigeria. And I guess that's when Nigeria doesn't have much impact on you. Maybe economically, or your livelihood doesn't depend on Nigeria, for example. Maybe I think that's the point where some people would uh, rather be Hausa or Yoruba, or identify more with Hausa and Yoruba than with Nigeria, because they don't have much to do with Nigeria. For now, I have interest in Nigeria because I am Nigerian citizen, and only Nigerian
Right.
citizen, I would say. I can't assure people that I wouldn't change as a person, or I wouldn't embrace another identity in the future. But I think it is usually at that point that you identify more with that culture that is part of you, because you eat tuwo every day, but you don't uh, do anything Nigerian more or less in your daily life. And then you realize that you are more of a Hausa person in the UK, or more of a British Hausa person than a Nigerian. And for also people who are born in the UK, for example, and who are raised in the UK, and she knows she wasn't raised with Nigerian values, if they ever exist. You get what I mean? But more or less with
Yeah, but
Hausa
I think
Muslim values,
she
for
once,
example.
yeah, Marzuk, I think if you are talking about Kemi, she once said she was raised by a Yoruba mom and in Nigeria. So I think she definitely has some ethnic Yoruba ethnic values in her childhood or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, that just to add on what you are saying.
So I think the most problem people are having with Kemi is the is the insincerity. More or less. She is, you could see the desperation. She is always using Nigeria to her advantage. There's this stereotype or this cliche that Nigerians usually would go to a foreign land, play a victim. Uh, we see that a lot with asylum seekers,
Right,
creating
right.
as much stories around the hardship they have faced, or the hardship they are likely going to return to in Nigeria. People creating
Mm.
stories around witchcraft, around village people following them, and stuff like that. So I don't see anything new in that. But what pains most people is identity is identity. What you self-identify with, nobody can force an identity onto you that you don't want. But
Right.
there is also a sense of decorum that, okay, leave Nigeria out. Uh, the UK itself has interest in one Nigeria because it amalgamated the North and the South into one
History.
Nigeria at some point. You get what I mean?
Right.
So you can't, as a politician or as a leader or a role model to some, you can't just start dishing out stereotypes against another ethnicities like Hausas in northern Nigeria just to score a political point. Leave Nigeria alone. You don't know that you identify as a Yoruba British politician. It's okay. That's fine. Nobody has issue
Right.
with that. So I think that's mostly people's concern.
Okay, there is this issue beyond all this politics. Like, we have to listen to our body, like physically, in the way we dress and the way we present ourselves. We can decide to say we have blended into our local diaspora, local host communities. Like, I can decide to dress like the Turkish people. You can decide to dress like the British people and do anything we like. But then, does our body agree with this kind of transformation? Do we really stop eating the food we are used to eating as Hausa people? I know Dr. Marzooq will gladly answer this and properly. But for Aisha, I know you may need to snitch on your parents because they are the first generation Hausa diaspora in British. Do they used to eat Hausa dishes and do they still eat Hausa cuisine? And what about you, that is a second generation Hausa diaspora?
Yes, so I did grow up eating, a lot of Hausa cuisine thanks to my parents. Even this morning, I made myself some dame from Acha because, yeah, I just
Really?
like, yeah, I had some. So yeah, and even when I got married and I left home and I realized I didn't know how to make tortilla and kuka, or jollof rice, and so I had to learn how to make that because those are two of my favorite dishes. But yeah, I think there. I still, I'm partial to a British like Sunday roast. I love a British roast dinner like that. I mean, I make my own, but like will Nigerianize it, as I say. So yeah, there's definitely. I think when it comes to food, I'm definitely a mix. That's when you kind of see the mixture of the two identities because I wouldn't say like one is more prominent than the other in the food that I eat, but I can't go too long without, tour or something, traditional from home because yeah, it just makes me feel at home. It's comfort food. Yeah, so yeah, they did good there. They did good there. They did good with, raising us speaking Hausa. They did knowing our culture. Yeah, I give my parents a 10 out of 10 when it comes to raising us as,
Oh,
young Hausa women in the UK.
amazing, amazing. Even though we could not see what you have eaten, you just told us. Anyway, we agree. But then, looking at you, I can see you tied your head gear the way Hausa women do it. How did you
Yes.
learn it? And do people
In
around
fact,
you
she did
from
it
your
the way
husband?
Hausa married women do it.
Uh,
Right?
That's
Because
perfect.
traditionally, it is the married Hausa women that
yeah.
rock it. Yeah.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. So, how did you learn it? And are you comfortable? And are the people around you, from your husband and your colleagues, maybe at work, do they love to see you dressed like this? Are you happy with
Mm.
that?
So I wear my hijab usually like with a different kind of undercap. I did this especially for the conversation, but yes, no, I do when I do like to wear traditional Nigerian clothing whenever I can. Obviously, like Marzooq said, like practicality wise in the UK, you can't really wear traditional. It's too cold. Even today, it's just too cold for us to wear traditional clothing. But any opportunity that I get, I do. And I think for us, because it's like something we don't get to do often, when we do get to do it, like we try to go all out. So, you know, whether it's Eid or a wedding or going to someone's sunnah, or yeah, so I love any kind of time that our community gets together for
Yeah.
something, because it's an excuse to pull out, you know, the tampa, get new inky done, whatever. So yeah, and as I've got older and I've become more involved in the community, more opportunities have come, and yeah, I enjoy it on a regular basis.
Okay, I know. Definitely, Marzooq is going to say something about also the way he dresses. But after you talk about that, I would also like you, Marzooq, to say, to tell me more about how you raise your child or children. I used to think of you, or rather, I have a reason to believe you are a kind of neo-conservative Hausa person because of the way you and a few persons I know name their kids or call their kids. I think you will need to tell us how you call your kids. Is it a Hausa name or an Arab originated name and what it means? And also how you interact with the kid. Do you speak Hausa to them and stuff like that, please?
So, as for interaction with the kids, I don't have very old children. The first one is 3. Yeah, he'll be 4 in January, and the second is just 3 months old. But of course, from the songs you play to them and to the stories you tell them, uh, as I have said, it is just that constant struggle of a bilingual, right? So it is more or less a mix of Hausa and English. More or less because so many things cannot be said in Hausa, and there are things you think out in Hausa, and there are things you think out in English. And so it is all about convenience. So probably about food, I would say, given the opportunity, be it what we would eat in Nigeria, and whenever for comfort or for feasibility, whenever we cannot, we ended up eating British food. Apologies, Aisha, what exactly is British food? Apart from chips and fish and fish. Okay, anyway, if it ever exists, if anything like British food exists. Anyway, they usually say that a lot. And I'm not the first to glorify British food. God. So so that's it. But and it makes sense because the first time I traveled out to the UK, I was 25 years old. That was 9 years old, and I think it's almost too late to start new habits around uh, nutrition and so many other things. So I interact with my wife as a typical. I wouldn't say typical because, as I've said, once you go, you can't come back completely. As a typical modern Hausa man. So we do everything. Whenever we are blessed with a child, we will have a traditional sunnah. Her mom or my mom would come around as it is traditionally, and then after 40 days or so, like this time around, if I have the opportunity, we will travel out so she can go home as it is in culture, go around families, around the extended family, show the new baby, and then get their places. And as with the namings of the children, I'm Marzooq, which is also I was named Marzooq, which is more or less an irony, because it is chances of getting to see another Marzooq in northern Nigeria is very slim. Anyway, you are Mazhun as well, so it is it is more Arabic than Islamic name, although it has the Muhammad prefix as usual with every with most Hausa boys, for example.
Right.
But come to realize, many people would ask, "What is the meaning of your name?" even Hausa people. Kasan man student and then you have to explain.
Right,
Just
right.
lots of stress. For example, all it means there are so many Hausa names that can easily translate that to with perfection. For example, I named my daughter Fatima, of course, because there is also that pressure that you can't just name her fully with a single Hausa name. I named her Fatima Yalwa, for example. Marzooq can go as Yalwa as well, or Mekudi, or something like that. Or anything that gives an indication that someone is blessed, probably by God, who is Ar-Razak, for example. So I just feel these are Hausa children and Hausa Muslim children, and there is no need to have a purely Arabic name because they are not Arabs. If they, I will name them any other name, maybe it is something to reflect their Muslim identity, like Muhammad and Fatima, which I did. But then they will definitely have a Hausa name that conveys whatever emotions or whatever philosophy I want them to embody. For example, I named my first son Husky, which is light, and light. There are many names that mean light in Arabic and in many other
Yeah,
languages.
like
So it
in
is
Turkish.
not.
Sorry to chip in. In Turkish, I think there is a
Sorry.
female name called Gunesh or something, which means sunlight or
Okay.
the sun. So it's very
Yeah.
common. So yeah,
Yeah, so there are things like shukra, which just means Gaudia. And so does it, reason number one. Reason number two is to probably maybe rebel around that inferiority complex. That why is shukra in any way better than Gaudia? Why would you be looked with some form of contempt because your name is good, yeah, not Shukra, for example. Just purely, it is purely inferiority complex, or more or less some form of Arabic imperialism that maybe has nothing to do with Islam because it is Islam. Promotes the culture of naming children with good names. But of course, if you name someone Muhammad, Fatima, Aisha, we all know your reason for example. That's purely Islamic, and
yeah.
I don't even know the meaning of Aisha, but I know if you name your daughter Aisha, it is more or less based on the Aisha bint Abu Bakr, right? The wife of the
Yeah.
Prophet, something like that.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of historical burden to it. Sorry, excuse me. So, where our listeners will wonder how we claim to be Hausa diaspora and we have not spoken Hausa for a minute. So, probably our next questions to close the session, we speak Hausa. Aisha, do you have any particular experience with how people name themselves? For example, talking about Yoruba people, I used to come across many Yoruba people have one ethnic name in their name. Even the Arabic names they borrow, they make sure they Yorubanize it so much like it sounds like a Yoruba name. For example, Romon. I think it's very hard, if not like you read people like Yorogi who explain that it is from Rahman. So, how do you see the way Hausa people name their kids and name other stuff like that? But please, you have to answer it in Hausa. We now speak Hausa before we close the session.
Okay, the pressure. To kamar ni an bani sunan kakana, maman mamana. So ina ji kamar mu Hausa mun fi son ba da sunan wani, like family members. So kaman
Kakanni. Iyaye.
so
Mm.
akwai wata cousin ina ita ma Aisha. So akwai Aisha's da yawa a family mu.
Mm.
So yeah, that's
So kenan sunan kaka aka sa, lalle da gaske wannan yana yawan faruwa, amma dai na san ni da kai Marzooq ba sunan kakannin ba wani kakanmu mai irin wannan sunan. So amma dai I think abu ne mai kyau da mutanenmu yanzu da suke amfani da sunayenmu na gargajiya, ko da kuwa ba sa ƙasa kamar ire-iren mu kenan da ma wanda suke ƙasan. So amma dai ni babban abin da nake gani shine akwai historical burden. Tarihi ne ya janyo, akwai dalilin da ya sa iyayenmu da kakanni suka fi son wa'annan sunayen. Sannan kuma shi Bahaushe kamar Allah ya shi da son karɓan baƙon abu. A wani aspect ɗin yana saurin karɓan abu, amma a wani aspect ɗin kuma yana da taurin kai ya ƙi canjawa. So wannan dai duka halayya ce ta ɗan adam, kowa da yanayin shi, kuma kowace al'ada da ƙabila suna da nasu abin da yake ɗaukan hankali ko yake burgewa, da kuma wanda yake janyo kushe da suka. So any last words? I think we need to round up the conversation. Remember, we are talking about new generation of Hausa Diaspora as part of the Hausa Book and Art Festival, Hibab 2024. So any last words, Marzooq?
So abinda na so na faɗa sai yanzu ya faɗo raina shine zai iya kasancewa kuma wani cultural reawakening da aka samu, ko revival, musamman a mutanen da suka yi tafiye-tafiye ko kuma suka samu kansu a wasu ƙasashen. Ka gane me yake nufi? Ai wataƙila sai ka je wani garin zaka daɗa fahimtar identity ɗinka. Alal misali, idan kana cikin mutanen da duka kamar ka suke, zai yi wahala ka damu akan kai baki ne, kai bahaushe ne, kai musulmi ne. Dama kowa da ke ka haka yake. Amma wataƙila idan ka shiga cikin wasu al'ummai da dama, wataƙila za ka fara tunanin kai wane ne kai. To, ni abinda nake tunani shi zai iya kasancewa mu ɗin ma da muka bar gida ɗin, wasu su ɗan dinga irin obasabi haka. Mu wuce makaɗi da rawa alal misali. Ya za a yi
Allah sa ba mu batar da Aisha ba. Aisha kin san wuce makaɗi da rawa
sunan turawa.
Overzealousness. Na gani.
Yawa, so wataƙila sai ka ce okay, Bature ya sa wa ɗansa sunan turawa, Balarabe ya sa wa ɗansa Balarabe. Ka je maka kawani ne, ka gama yadda sun bisu damu ma da bai kai ba, bakar fata, ko ka je can an ɗan maka wani ɗan discrimination a ƙasar Balarabe, ka je haza an kaza, sai ka fara tunanin okay, to kai wane ne kai? Allah fa yana son ka yadda kake, yana son kabilar ka kai ma, kuma yana son ka matsayin ka na bawan shi, sannan yaran ka shi ma yana da amfani. Shi yasa inda bai da amfani, Allah wataƙila ba zai halicce ka ya baka shi ba, if it is completely useless. Kuma it is there for a purpose, ka san kai wane ne kai, ka gaya wa 'ya'yanka su wane ne su. So to wataƙila hakan zai iya jawowa mutane su ce okay, bari mu yi kaza, bari yi kaza, mu yi kaza, abubuwan da wanda ma Hausawa ne suke cikin Najeriya a halin yanzu ba sa yi. Alal misali dai da ke gani.
To, wannan ya yi kyau. Mun gode sosai a Dr. Marzooq. Sai Aisha.
Gode, thank you so much.
Okay. So Nima, let me bani da wani last word. Thank you so much, the panelists. It has been a great conversation with Dr. Marzooq Ungogo and Aisha Rimi, both living in the United Kingdom, and myself living in Turkey. So thank you so much, the organizers of Hibab 2024. We hope we are going to have a very great festival, even though we are far away from the physical event. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.